He sat before me, a typical petulant 13-year-old. It was a week before his bar mitzvah, and he'd announced to his family last night at dinner that he didn't believe in God and didn't want a bar mitzvah. They didn't know what to do. Cancel the simcha? The invitations already went out. The caterer was already paid. The yarmulkes were already on order. Send him to the rabbi. So here he sat in front of me. You don't believe in God? I asked him. No, he confessed, with eyes cast downward, like he just told the vice principal that it was his spitball that hit the head cheerleader. Okay, let's talk. He looked up at me relieved that I wasn't going to take out my Dumbledore wand and place a curse on him. You don't believe in God. Okay. When you say that, what do you mean by God? That was a question he didn't expect. You're a rabbi, you know God. Yeah, I know, but it's a slippery word. What do you mean when you say God? God. You know, God. God is a spirit. God is invisible, but he's everywhere. God watches us. He punishes us when we're bad. He rewards us when we're good. You know, God. I can't believe in that anymore, Rabbi, because there's just too much bad stuff in the world with terrorism and hurricanes and wars. I just can't believe in that. Good. I don't believe in that either, I responded. But let me tell you something. That's not God. That's Santa Claus. You know, he knows if you've been sleeping. He knows if you're awake. He knows if you've been bad or good, so be good for goodness sake. That's Santa Claus. I don't believe in him either. But you're a rabbi. You're religious. Yeah, but being religious doesn't mean I give up my intelligence. Let me ask you something. Do you have any pictures of yourself when you were a little kid? She says, sure. My mom says I was very cute. I'm sure you were. Can you still wear those clothes? The clothes you wore when you were small? No, I grew out of them years ago. And if you tried to put them on, they'd be pretty uncomfortable, right? Yeah. Well, you've outgrown your idea of God. You still have a kid's idea of God. And now you're starting to think like a grown-up. And just as your clothes don't fit anymore, your ideas don't fit. You need a grown-up God. A grown-up God? What's a grown-up God? He's not alone, you know. Not alone in his disbelief. According to a recent survey of American Jewish identity, some 35% of younger American Jews define themselves as Jewish without religion. If you ask, they complain that religious institutions are authoritarian and boring and expensive. They find religious teaching irrelevant and ritual hollow. But if you probe a bit more, you come to this. It just doesn't make sense. What religion teaches us is just not my truth. Through no fault of their own, they are mature thinking, critically minded adults working off a child's religious script. They've outgrown their ideas of God. What's a grown-up idea of God, he asks me. Where do we find this God? Where do we start? Splitting seas? Burning bushes? Nope. We start with ordinary experience. When my daughter Nessa was 3 years old, we had a routine. Each night I would tuck her into bed, sing our bedtime prayers, kiss her goodnight, and attempt to sneak out of the room. Halfway down the hall, she began to scream, "Abba! There's an alligator under my bed! There's a monster in the closet! There's a giant spider on the ceiling! Abba!" Now, I read Parents Magazine, which is the Shulchan Aruch of parenting, so I know what to do. You walk back in the kid's room, you turn on every light, you look under the bed. No alligator, Ness. I check the closet. No monsters, Nessa. I survey the ceiling. No spiders, Nessa. Now go to bed. Tomorrow's coming. You got to get some sleep. Everything is safe. Go to bed. I love you. Okay, Abba, she says. But leave a light on. We did this dance for an entire year. Until one night I stopped and realized what just happened. I stopped myself in the middle of the hallway and asked myself a question. Who's right? Whose description of the world is factually correct? The child afraid of alligators under the bed, or the father who reassures her that everything is safe and that tomorrow is surely coming? The truth is that the child is correct. She doesn't know the names of the alligators under her bed. She doesn't know about the diseases of the body and diseases of society, of terrorists and lunatics who steal away our future. We grown-ups know all these threats too well, all the threats that surround us, and yet we still insist to our children that the world is safe enough to trust, at least for this one night. All loving parents do this. Nobody says, you know, kid, you're right. The world is a cold, evil place full of monsters. Go to bed. Nobody says that. Even the most hard-boiled atheist whispers to the child, tomorrow is coming. You're safe tonight. Go to sleep. The most precious gift we give our children is our faith that the world is theirs, that the world welcomes them and celebrates their arrival, that the world anticipates their uniqueness, and that the world is so arranged that they can thrive. Of course, there are threats and dangers, but we know we can equip them to cope. Latent in the vocation of parenting is a system of beliefs about the nature of the world. This view of the world is not factual, and yet every parent believes it. This is the faith of parenting. Faith is not an assent to a creed. It is not a testimony to some proposition or some catechism. Faith is lived. Beneath all our everyday actions and choices and decisions is an implicit system of beliefs. This system of beliefs forms a map that describes the world, its dangers and its opportunities, its pitfalls and possibilities. The map points us toward what we deem to be success, where happiness is, how to get there, and it helps us anticipate what we're going to meet along the way. Everyone has a map. And what's on the map is not empirical, it's not factual, it can't be proven scientifically. It's proven by the life we choose to live. Most of us give to charity. How come? Why do you give to charity? Because we believe that charity heals the world. But how do we know that? What if it turned out that there's a given amount of suffering in the world at any one time, and healing it over here only transfers it over there? We cured malaria, we were afflicted with polio. We cured polio, we were afflicted with cancer. We treat cancer, we got AIDS. We stopped AIDS, we found Ebola. How do you know that the world can be healed? You don't. You just believe it. Because believing it makes you the person you want to be. You know what a bar mitzvah is? I ask my young friend. It's when you begin choosing your map. You begin to decide who you most want to be. But where is God in all this, he insists. Where is God? God's coming, I assure him. But you don't start with God. You start by trying to make sense of life. Okay, but what is God? What is God anyway? It's a question of how big your map is. The Ger Rebbe was a great 19th century Hasidic master in Poland. He wrote a letter to his children all about God. We say the Shema Yisrael every day, twice a day, the Rebbe taught, but no one stops to think about what it means. He writes, the meaning of Adonai Echad, God is one, he wrote, is not that God is the only God, negating other gods, though this too is true. The meaning is deeper than that. There's nothing else but God. Everything that exists in the world, spiritual and physical, is God himself. And because of this, every person can attach himself to God wherever he is through the holiness that exists within every single thing. I tell my young friend, imagine you're standing in front of a big mirror. Now touch your head. Now touch your arms. Now touch your legs. Now touch your belly. Now touch your self. My what? You know, yourself. The part of you that's really you. Touch your self. He's flummoxed. We all have a sense of self. That inner voice that's you. We become aware of it somewhere at the age of 2. It's the most remarkable part of us. It lives in the body, but it's not entirely of the body. That's why you can't find it to touch. You could lose any part of your body, but you'd still be you, because you'd still have a sense of self. But what is it? What is self? The most immediate and intimate part of our being is a mystery. The Talmud offers this insight. What God is to the world, the self is to the body. So let's turn it upside down. What self is to each one of us, God is to the universe. Imagine that the entire universe is a body, and God is the self of the universe. In Torah, God has a personal name. In Hebrew, it's spelled Yud-Hey, Vav-Hey. It's unpronounceable. It's a conflation of the words for was, is, and will be. All that was, all that is, and all that will be, all three pronounced at the same time. That's what makes it unpronounceable. But it has implications that are very powerful. If we imagine the universe as a body and God as the self of the universe, then what are we? Each of us is a cell in the body of God. Just as each cell has a special function in the body, each of us is a unique and precious expression of the whole of God with a unique role to play in the life of the world. Each of us is needed. Each of us is necessary for the health, the well-being of the whole. And at the same time, each of us is supported by the whole, just as a cell is nurtured by the body. What happens in a body when one cell decides it wants to go it alone? To go rogue and see its own way with no regard to the well-being of the whole. That's called disease. That's cancer. What cancer is to a body, evil is to the world. It's when one of us forgets that we're connected to the whole social ecology, when we forget that we are responsible for everyone else. The counterpart to the verse Adonai Echad is the commandment Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. You will love the other as yourself, because in reality, the other is yourself. We are forbidden from making any image of God, because God is the all. But there's one exception. There's only one exception to that commandment. The philosopher Abraham Joshua Heschel taught that God broke his own rule when he created human beings in the divine image. Taught Heschel, it's not that we can't make an image out of God, but that the only material out of which you can make an adequate image of God is the entirety of a human life. Religion, Heschel taught, begins with a consciousness of something asked of us, to live a life that reflects the oneness of all. Rabbi Schulweis called this godliness. I asked him where he got it from. I thought it would be some sophisticated text, Feuerbach or Maimonides. He said, no, I got it from the bracha, from the simplest formula of Jewish prayer, the bracha we all say. Every bracha, he taught, has a subject and a predicate. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, praised is God, that's the subject. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, that's the predicate. But why a predicate? If all we wanted to do is praise God, all we needed was the subject. Baruch atah Adonai, praise God. Stop there. Why a predicate? We add the predicate, he taught. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, rofei cholim, matir asurim, God who makes bread from the earth, God who heals the sick, God who brings peace to the world. Because the true meaning of the bracha is to focus attention on the power of this act to reflect the oneness of all. When I feed the hungry, when I heal the sick, when I comfort the bereaved, when I nurture a child, I become the hands and eyes and ears of God in the world. I bring together the broken pieces of the world and make them into one. So what makes this so hard? What makes God so hard for people? It's ego. It's the infantile scream, me, mine. It's the voice that puts me at the center of the universe. Religion comes to teach us how to quiet that voice. That's what prayer is really all about. It's not about praising a God out there. It's about quieting the voice of the ego, to quell the screaming voice demanding attention, attention, attention. Our most important prayer, Shema Yisrael. It's not a prayer to God at all. It's a plea. It's a plea within. Listen. Listen. Quiet the internal noise and listen, because from listening comes humility, and from humility, gratitude, and from gratitude, empathy, and from empathy, solidarity and commitment. Religion teaches us to recognize it's not about me, or more precisely, that the boundaries of me are much bigger than I thought. When I give up the small infantile self to gain a larger spiritual self. Right under the word Shema in the Torah is the word ve'ahavta, you will love. When I love, I give up the smaller self to become a bigger self. When I love, I surrender the self to discover the self. When I open the tightly drawn circle of self, when I unfold my map and discover that it's so much bigger than I thought, something awakens inside of me, and I'm filled with a sense that I matter, that my life matters. I discover the larger coherence of life, its pattern, its meaning, its purpose. My young friend sits back in his chair. That's God? That's it? That's God? Yes. But there's one more step. You may not understand this today, but someday you're going to need to know this. So just listen. We all carry a map. And as long as our experiences fit into the picture, as long as they follow the map remains unconscious and unexamined. But we have no reason to look at it too carefully or to wonder where it came from. But every so often, something knocks us off the map. Life doesn't roll out the way it was supposed to. And in the ensuing crisis, a sense of disequilibrium sets in. And we're forced to take out the map and take a good look at it. And ask ourselves, what map do I use now? 20 years ago, I was diagnosed with a very dangerous cancer. It was dangerous enough that a doctor literally asked me if my life insurance was paid up. One heck of a bedside manner, that one. A surgery was scheduled, and I had a week to wait. What do you do during such a week? How do you spend a week waiting to find out if you're going to live or die? It was during that week that I discovered the question. The question all the Torah I know had come to answer. Looking into the darkness one very, very dark night, I wondered, is the core of reality dark and cold and empty, and life but a happy biochemical accident on this tiny planet? Or is the heart of reality life, creativity, and benevolence, and we are the vessels, the instruments of that energy? Is death the normal state of things and life the aberration? Or is life the rule and death the exception? Which is the absolute and which is derivative? Which is the norm and which is the exception? In the Bible, there's a book called Job. It tells an ancient story, it's even older than our Bible, about a good and righteous man who suffers every imaginable loss. He turns his eyes toward heaven and he screams, "Why me? Why me, God?" For his entire life, he had preached the justice of God and the goodness of God, and now where was that justice and where was that goodness? How could he suffer so? For 35 beautiful literary chapters, Job rages against heaven, asking again and again what so many of us have asked, why me? And finally, at the end of the book, God shows up. God shows up to answer him, but not like Elijah, not with a still small voice. God shows up in a hurricane and screams at Job, "Who is this who darkens counsel, speaking without knowledge? Gird your loins like a man, I ask, and you inform me. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundations? Speak if you have understanding. Have you ever commanded the dawn to break, assigned the day its place? Have you surveyed the vast expanses of the earth?" God, in the book of Job, takes man on a grand tour of the world of nature, and he asks him again and again and again, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are anyway? Who are you to question me? You don't matter. You are insignificant. This isn't about you. Your suffering isn't a moral judgment because you're not important enough for judgment. In the grander scheme of things, you're nothing. You're nobody. You're invisible. You'll never meet a Jewish person named Job. We have Avis and Davids and Mordechais and Yerachmiels and Yaakovs, but we got no Jobs because it's not a Hebrew name. It's older than Hebrew. It comes from the very first Mesopotamian language, the Akkadian language. And in the Akkadian language, in Akkadian culture, the name Job, Eov in Hebrew, the name Job, it means everyman. John Doe, occupant. I get a lot of his mail. Job is a cipher for the common human experience, and the common human experience is to understand reality from facing nature. Facing nature, the common human experience is nature doesn't care. Nature is indiscriminate. The wind blows, the rain soaks, the earthquake rattles the righteous together with the sinful. Staring into the face of nature, what does my life mean? My life means very little. A precious few years, a few accomplishments, a few moments of love. Cancer comes and wipes it all away, and then nothingness. It all dissolves into oblivion. But every biblical story has its opposite, its counterpuntal melody. The Talmud teaches that Job lived at the same time as Abraham. Abraham was commanded, Lech lecha me'artzecha, go from your home, your native land, your father's house, to the land that I will show you. Abraham was commanded, I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and as for you, heyeh bracha, be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and curse those who curse you, and in you shall all the families of the earth be blessed. One man is singled out to carry divine blessing into the world. He's covenanted. He's bound into partnership with God, and he's the Father of us all. Each of us carries a piece of that blessing into the world. We are a part of God's self, and each of us reflects the light at the center of the universe. Each of us matters. Two stories, Job and Abraham, both in the Bible. Two completely different religious universes. Two alternative maps of the world. You choose. You choose. I carry a map of my life. Is my map just a single page that dissolves when I do? Or is my map a tile in a great mosaic that stretches into eternity? No empirical evidence can answer this question. It's completely a matter of orientation. We choose. And in choosing, it changes everything. Am I here in the world to enjoy this brief, momentary individuality? Or am I a reflection of an eternal evolution of life, creativity, and blessing? Am I the hands of God in the world? That's the question that Torah comes to answer. Now your map isn't just bigger, it extends forever. Believing in God isn't something you do once. It's a journey, it's a process. It's a discovery of your map. It's part of deciding who you're going to be in the world, what kind of person, how you want to touch the world. And that's why you need to have a bar mitzvah. He says, okay. What's your Torah, I ask him. And he tells me the name of his parsha. I said, no, I don't mean that. What's your Torah? There are 5,845 verses in a Torah scroll. That's 304,805 handwritten letters. And if even one is missing, if even one is erased or defaced, you're not allowed to use that Torah. The Torah becomes pasul. Now that's a great example of Jewish obsessive-compulsive disease. But it has a truth behind it, a very profound truth. Each one of us stands for one. Each letter in the Torah stands for one of us. Each letter in the Torah stands for one of us. Each one of us is sent into the world with a word, with a phrase, with a sentence of God's truth. If any one of us fails to deliver his or her word, the message becomes indecipherable. You have a Torah. You are a Torah. You're a truth sent here to testify. You're given a truth to deliver. Now go find it and make sure the world hears it. You too, all of you, this is your Yom Kippur homework. You have a Torah. You are a Torah. You were sent into the world to announce and declare and testify to a truth. Now go find it and make sure the world hears it. Amen. Please return to the machzor. We rise together as the ark is opened. Aleinu l'shabeach. Somewhere.
Aleinu l'shabeach Adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורמנו